Hello, I'm Richard Burton from the Richard Burton Art Centre on the Yorkshire coast. Now, do you want to get some dramatic skies? Do you want to get some life and energy into skies that really bring punch to your paintings and give them some drama and excitement? Well, today we're going to do that, and not just with the brush. We're going to use our fingers as well. So we're going to use some different techniques in a creative way to really capture something really special. Now, we're looking at Bridlington from Sowerby, looking across the bay into the town, but into the light. Now, the picture I've got is got one where the light is not quite where I want it. So what we're going to do, we're not going to be totally controlled by the photograph. We're going to create our own interpretation, which is really what we're about. We're trying to do an interpretation. I'm going to show you how to use an okay photograph and turn it into something that I think is really quite effective, particularly with the light and the sky and the sun rays. So let's get down to it. Now, before we start, I must remind you about our free watercolour starter guide, which is all about 5 steps into watercolour. It's something that we've been putting together for over a year now, and it's got nearly 3,000 followers, and it's really helping a lot of people. I know from the feedback we're getting. Now, it's a free guide. It's in the link below, so all you have to do is click on the link and get yourself a free copy. Please use it and let me know how you get on with it. Also, we've got our online watercolour course, which many of you have been following. Well, I'm pleased to say we've got our release date for the 23rd of December. Now, if you're interested in this, please stay tuned. We'll be sending more information out. Now, in the meantime, let's get back to the picture. This is the view from Bridlington from Sowerby with the snow. And what we've got a nice view. We're looking into the light, but we're going to make it much more exciting. I want to do something with this a little bit different. I'm going to create that feeling of light coming through the clouds, and we're going to use some light rays that's going to hit the buildings and really give it a little bit more of mood and atmosphere and create one of those wonderful skies and complement it with a little bit more excitement in the foreground. So as I say, the thing about this is going to be the big sky and the dramatic nature of it, capturing the light. And we're going to utilise the town, and we're going to utilise the tree in the foreground, and obviously that sweep into the bay. That's going to be the principal elements in the picture. So we're going to start with the sketch, and the sketch really is going to be a big sky. So we're going to start off with a horizon line that's sort of 1/3, 2/3 sky, and then put a suggestion of the town. We're going to capture 1 or 2 of the buildings just on the edge there. I think that's the Coast Guard station, actually. Then we're going to capture that and then give suggestion of the town. The church tower up against the horizon line, which is going to be important. Just those elements. And then I'm going to utilise the big tree. The big tree is going to be the anchor point that leads my eye in, and a lot of the light will come through that tree. And that will formulate pretty much all of the sketching. Right, so we'll start with the equipment. I'm going to use 5 brushes. I'm going to use 3 wash brushes, 1 particularly large, and then a couple of smaller ones for the details. And we're going to lay out our colours in the colour story, as I normally like to do. We're going to have warm on one side on the left and cool on the right. And the first thing is I want to try and capture that light coming through the clouds. So I want to capture that orange and yellow. And firstly, I'm going to start with yellow ochre, which is a wash of that. And then when I've mixed that, I'm going to use some cadmium red and a little bit of alizarin crimson to create a pink glow that's going to be important, and that will sort of set off the warmer colours in the sky. And then we'll move towards the cooler, and that's going to start with the blues. The blue's going to be cobalt blue, and then following that I'm also going to have a little bit of Prussian blue in there, that sort of colour range in the blues. And then I also want some crimson in the middle, which is going to be alizarin crimson and probably a little bit of light red, but mostly alizarin crimson. And then I want to make a couple of greys. Now the greys are going to be important because they're going to provide that shadow. So I want a lighter grey and a darker grey. The lighter grey is going to be ultramarine blue and burnt umber, and the darker grey is going to be what I call a three-dimensional three-tone grey, which is going to be ultramarine blue, burnt umber and a little bit of alizarin crimson. Okay, so now for the exciting sky. We're going to try and capture that dramatic look with the sun behind the clouds, but on the left-hand side, coming through the clouds and with rays on the water and also onto the buildings. So firstly, I'm going to wet the sky, put a good bit of moisture onto the paper, but I'm going to leave a few little areas of white paper so that I can use those for the white cloud that's just sort of coming through, crisp edges here and there. So we're going to start with the warmer tones. That's going to be yellow ochre, higher up, probably a little bit of cadmium yellow in there just to sort of spark it up a little bit. And then I'm going to use some of the red, which is going to be the alizarin crimson and the cadmium red. Drop that in, mainly bring that down towards the horizon so you get that varied tone from light to dark in that. Drop all that in and then let that soak in. Okay, so now that's soaked in, it's just onto that damp stage. I'm now going to drop in the lighter grey, trying to give that initial feel of some of the shadow in the clouds, just trying to capture the general feel of the middle tones of the cloud areas so I can just start to develop the structure. Once I've done that, again let that soak in. I'm then going to utilise the blue and start with the cobalt blue higher up and drop that blue sky that's trying to come through those clouds just in patches. And now these patches are going to hit some damp areas and going to hit some dry areas, and just let them find their way through the sky area. What you end up with some what I call lost and found edges. It'll be quite effective, it'll be much more random, and it will really make the sky work. The next thing is to just be a little bit more patient and then wait for the moving from the damp to the moist stage of the paper, and I'm going to drop in the dark clouds. These are going to give that dimension, that 3 dimension to the clouds, and really give some sort of sense of structure. They're going to be particularly dark higher up and around where I feel is the sun just trying to sort of come through the clouds. That's important. Just gradually build these in, drop them all the time, watching the moisture of the paper, just trying to do it onto that moist and damp stage. Now I've done that initial bit of cloud work, I'm going to strengthen the dark by adding a little bit more blue and the brown together with a little bit more of the crimson. Just make a stronger dark, and I'm going to drop that into the clouds, just into the sort of darker areas, and try and pick out a little bit of shape to the clouds. That will just give that little bit more definition and feel for the clouded areas and make the sky come to life that little bit more. After that, what the next bit is the really exciting bit. This is where we're going to do something quite different. I'm going to use my hands and my fingers, and I'm literally going to warm them up and then just drag them on the surface to create that feeling of rays coming from the sun onto the land. Now I'm doing it a little bit, my hands are a little bit dry, so I'm just wetting them and then trying them again and putting those finger marks in place. And if it doesn't quite work out, often it does work quite well straight away. In this case, it hasn't quite worked as well. So what I'm going to do is, in the same finger mark areas, I'm going to get my brush, wet my brush, and lift off some of the colour just to give that feeling of rays coming through the clouds, to give that extra little bit of dynamic that we're trying to do to this painting. Now we're going to let that dry, and what we're going to do is the distance and the town and the sea and such like. Now we're going to start by firstly utilising some yellow. There's going to be that little bit of yellow ochre that we're going to drop in, and then we're just going to drop that, dance that onto the town, just to sort of give that feeling of a little bit of warmth from the sun onto the buildings, and just again let that dry. Now while that's drying, I'm going to use a little bit of cobalt blue and a little bit of crimson to just give the effect of the water. And what I wanted to do, I'm going to paint this on a dry brush effect because I want to capture the idea of the sun rays bouncing off the water, so you get that feeling of distant highlights in the water. So just do that on a dry brush technique, which is basically left and right horizontal movements but onto a dry surface. Now after letting that dry, we're going to come back into the town again, and I'm going to deal with the distant colours, the distant greys. I'm going to utilise cobalt blue and light red for this. Just gently put in the harbour, put in the horizon elements, just shadows here and there around the buildings, and just carefully just give the impression of a bit of shape for the town. As I came to the edge of the town, I'm just going to add a little bit stronger darks here and there, using again similar colours, but this time I'm also going to put some of the hedges and some of the foliage in the front of the town and some of the bushes and trees. I'm going to use ultramarine blue and burnt umber for that, and a little bit of burnt sienna. Once I sort of moved away from the town and got those trees and hedges in place, there's a bigger middle distance tree that I want to get in. That's going to use a bit of Prussian blue and a bit of raw sienna and a little bit of burnt umber in there as well, just to give that little bit of extra punch to that tree. Then following that, I'm going to put a light wash. There's a middle distance area, which is like a field, but it's got long grass. The snow's not really on it in the same way. You can see more of the grasses through. So I'm going to use a light wash of burnt sienna for that, and use a little bit of the Prussian blue, and probably a little bit of burnt umber in there as well, just to cascade that through. So you've got that. That will provide that middle distance before we come forward to the foreground. As this area moves towards being damp and nearly dry, I'm going to put a few more details in just to give a feeling of, well, again, lost and found edges, but suggestions of detail. It doesn't need to be too much, just really suggestions of detail. Keep it minimal, but they can be really effective if you can get that just right, because your eye will pick it up and interpret it as something much more important. And I'm also going to put a few darks and details around the town, just to give that feeling a little bit more balance to it. Now I'm going to do the classic winter tree of mine, which I've done a lot, and I'm doing many of my classes, and many people enjoy this thoroughly. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give it, the tree trunk, a light gentle wash of yellow ochre, just to give it a little bit of warmth. And then into that I'm going to mix some dark, which is going to be ultramarine blue and burnt umber, with a little bit of crimson, and just cascade that into the tree trunk, predominantly on the shadow side, but let it sort of diffuse across. And by letting it diffuse across, not only do you get shape and texture, but you'll get that feeling of roundness to it as well. And then once I've done that, I then cascade through and put in the branches and move forward to get the general feel and shape of the tree. A little bit of work here just to put those branches in. I'm not looking for the tiny branches. I just want to give a general feel to the tree. So once you've done that, that will take a little while to do. Just do it carefully, but remember, branches go up as well as down, so you need to get a general feel for it. It's not capturing every branch, but it's just getting that overall sense of winter tree. Okay, so we're doing the basic structure, and this tree has got a real feel to it, but obviously it looks a bit apocalyptic at the moment, so we need to get that smaller branches in place. And what we're going to utilise here is going to be a light wash of burnt sienna and cobalt blue. Mix that in, and then using a relatively large big brush, I'm using a number 10, I'm going to use the side of the brush, and I'm going to just gently drag brush, what I call drag brush, on the surface, put this wash in place. And what this does, it just gives that feeling of those smaller branches that just come to life. And the combination of the tree structure and the wash on the top really gives quite an effective winter tree. Now you can change the colours to suit, you can make it a little bit more brown or a little bit more blue as you go, but the overall effect is one of really giving you a convincing winter tree. So now we're down to the foreground. Obviously the white paper's the snow, so what we're going to do here is I'm just going to jazz up the scene. The original photograph is a little bit plain for me, and I thought we can do a little bit more. So I'm putting some yellow ochre, a little bit of burnt sienna, give a feeling of grasses that are just coming through the snow. I'm going to put those in using a sort of smaller brush, just get a feeling of some little washes and some little hard edges, so you get a feeling of the grasses. I'm also going to bring that detail, that general sense of shape to some of the fields in the distance, just bring that into the picture a little bit more, and again put some of the darks also in the foreground to give a feeling of some of the darker twigs that are coming out of the grass. Now, before I do the final shadows for the snow, what I'm going to do is just teasing in a few more darks here and there, just to give a little bit more shape to some of the bushes, some of the hedges, some of the fields, just to give it an overall feeling of depth. So that will set the scene for putting the snow shadows in. Now I want to try and capture a little bit of that shallow snow, so you've got a little bit of the green just coming through. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to utilise some cobalt turquoise and a little bit of yellow ochre, and just put a light wash, and using some dry brush techniques, just brush on the surface just gently and give that feeling of broken edge to the wash, and it'll just give the feeling of the grass coming through the snow. I'm now remixing a bit of cobalt blue, and I'm going to put some blue shadows on some of the buildings just at the edge of the town, and then I'm going to start utilising this cobalt blue with a little bit of burnt sienna to start to put in some of the snow shadows in the distance, and then bring it into the foreground as well. Put those in with a larger brush, and I'm also going to be conscious that I need to get these snow shadows a bit deeper as they come into the foreground, so you get a much more stronger blue and a feel for those snow shadows that are a little bit stronger in the foreground. Sort of gently keep adding that little bit of blue into the snow shadows just to deepen them in the foreground. And in actual fact, I'm also going to add a little bit of crimson into that blue, particularly in the foreground, because I feel there's a little bit of a crimson blue in the shadows in the foreground. It just differentiates it from the distance. And then once I've done that, I'm going to add a few more darks here and there, a bit more shadows on the town, pick up the horizon line, which is the far distance, just with a delicate grey, and then generally, altogether, add a few more darks here and there, just to give a bit more definition. Now the snow is starting to dry, but not fully dry. I'm just going to deepen that blue-grey and add a few more shadows into the foreground, and also put the tree line shadow as well in place. I'm now really happy. I'm getting that little bit of light and energy coming through the painting, and I'm going to finish off now with, in the foreground particularly, with a few tufts of brown and burnt sienna, just to give that feeling of darker grasses that are coming through the snow. So after I finish deepening the blue in the foreground a bit more, I'm going to add a couple of figures with a couple of dogs, just to give that little bit of interest. And we'll just carefully apply those with a small brush. Once you put them in, don't forget to give them a little bit of a shadow as well, just to sort of set them into the snow. And we'll take one final look. So we're taking an overall look now. What we've done, we've taken the photograph, we've taken the scene, the slight altered the sun, created that feeling of atmosphere, that dramatic sky with the light coming through, jazzed up the front a little bit with the foreground, giving a little bit more life to it. And overall, I think we've got quite an exciting picture. So it shows you don't have to be totally governed by the photograph or the source. You can actually use a bit of creative license to create something a little bit more special. Okay, so there we have it, the finished picture. And as it's Christmas, not only have I put a mount around it, I put a frame around it, show it off. So this is the dramatic sky over Bempton, over Bridlington actually, Bridlington from Sowerby. And obviously what we did was not only trying to capture the sky, trying to capture the light through it with a bit of energy in the painting, mixing the greys, but we also use our fingers to create that sort of sun rays coming through. Now, normally what I do, as I did on the picture, I sort of rub my hands together, get them warm, get them moving, and just put my fingers on that damp surface. Now, it didn't quite work as I wanted, so I had to use the brush, but in many cases, I can get away with that just with my fingers, and the grease in my fingers will just create that effect, which is another technique for us to follow and practice. And the key about these things, it's simple steps. Hope you've followed in the fact that we do simple stages and build up those stages with steps between them, so we have that drying time between them. Don't rush to do too much in one go, because if you do, that's where we go wrong, and that's where you turn it into a little bit mud and you overwork it. Break it into simple steps and you'll get really quite an effective approach. But the key is to practice those steps. The more you practice it, the better you'll get, the more you enjoy it, and you'll keep painting. So it's a great one to do and have a go over Christmas. Also, I want to say a big thank you. We've got 8,500 subscribers to the channel, which is massive, absolutely massive. We're only 11 months old, and it's a big thank you to you. And what I want to say now is if you're new to the channel, please don't forget to like and subscribe. That just gets it picked up by a wider audience, and it helps us celebrate watercolour, which is basically a fantastic thing to do. Also, once again, I'm going to remind you, we've got our new online course and new website coming out on the 23rd of December. So please watch out for the newsletters. There'll be more information in those, and also there'll be more in the community posts on the YouTube channel as well. In the meantime, I hope you enjoy and keep painting.